The Stranger's Legacy, a will that turned reality upside down. Autumn always came to Ternivka just as quietly as it left, unnoticed, like a thief stealing away the last remnants of summer's warmth. This year, October felt especially cold and silent. Alexander Petrenko walked down the street, wrapped in an old coat that had seen his student days. The wind rustled leaves beneath his feet like pages of an unfinished book, and Alexander thought his life was much like that book, predictable, with yellowed pages worn by time, lacking any bright plot twists. A small notary office on the street corner looked as inconspicuous as dozens of similar offices in town. Alexander reread the address twice on the strange letter he had received 3 days ago. You are required to appear regarding the will of citizen Stepan Ivanovich Kravchuk, it read. The name meant nothing to him. He flipped through the pages of his memory, but found no trace of anyone by that name. Petrenko Alexander Mikhailovich? The notary asked as he entered the office. The woman looked like an owl. Her large glasses accentuated the impression, and her sharp, attentive gaze seemed to see right through him. Yes, that's me, Alexander replied, feeling his heart beat a little faster. I got a letter about some will. That's right. The notary nodded. Please have a seat. The situation is rather unusual. She pulled out a dark blue leather folder from the desk. Embossed in gold letters was Kravchuk S.I. Time had not been kind to the document. Its edges were frayed, some pages yellowed with age. Stepan Ivanovich Kravchuk died 3 weeks ago. The notary began adjusting her glasses. He was alone, with no direct heirs. However, his will clearly states that all his property passes to you. Alexander felt the floor beneath him sway, like the deck of a ship in a storm. But I've never known this man, he tried to explain. There must be some mistake. There are no mistakes in the documents, the notary said firmly, as if delivering a verdict. They include your full name, birth date, and even passport number. Moreover, there's a testamentary letter addressed to you. She handed him a sealed envelope. It was heavy, like a stone dragging him down. Alexander took it with trembling fingers and noticed, with a part of his mind still aware, that the seal looked old-fashioned, red wax stamped with a coat of arms. What am I inheriting? He asked, words caught in his throat. A house on the outskirts of town, a bank account with a substantial sum, and some personal belongings. All documents are ready for transfer. Stepping out of the office, Alexander stood in the cold rain, feeling nothing as drops slid down his collar. The envelope in his hand seemed to pulse, alive. Finally, he entered the nearest cafe, ordered a cup of black coffee, and while waiting, broke the seal. Dear Alexander, you do not know me, but I know everything about you. I have watched your life since the day you were born. Your first step, your first word, your first love, your first betrayal, and your first disappointment. You may ask why. The answer is both simpler and more complex than you can imagine. In this will, I leave you not only material possessions. The greatest inheritance is the truth about you and me. Come to the house. The address is enclosed below. Everything you find there belongs to you by right of birth. S. Kravchuk. The paper trembled in Alexander's hands like autumn leaves in the wind. By right of birth. What did that mean? For a moment, he thought it was some cruel joke or mistake. But his passport number, the exact birth date, who else could know such details? The house turned out to be no ordinary home, but true historic mansion. A 2-story Victorian-style manor surrounded by a wrought iron fence, beyond which lay a garden. Autumn leaves carpeted the paths in gold, and old apple trees bowed their branches under the weight of late fruit. The key, given by the notary, turned in the lock with a heavy creak, as if the door hadn't been opened for a long time. Inside, Alexander was met with a piercing silence and the smell of old books, dust, and wax. The corridor walls were hung with photographs in heavy frames. Alexander stepped closer and froze. The yellow portrait showed unfamiliar faces that somehow seemed familiar. Men and women of different generations, but all sharing something intangible with his own reflection in the mirror. The last portrait made his heart skip. A man about 60 with penetrating eyes and graying temples. The caption read, Stepan Kravchik, 1970. But what moved Alexander most deeply were the eyes, the very same eyes he saw every day in his own reflection. The next few hours became a plunge into another life. In the study on the second floor, Alexander found diaries neatly arranged by year. The first was dated 1980, the year of his birth. The first page held a short note. Today he was born, my son, whom I will never call my own. Evening shadows wrapped the house when Alexander reached the last diary. Dozens of notebooks lay around him like echoes of a life he never knew was part his own. The story unfolding on these pages was a complex mosaic of love, betrayal, sacrifice, and hidden secrets. Stepan Kravchik, it turned out, was his biological father. The man Alexander had called Dad all his life could not have children. The young Petrenko family, desperate, agreed to a secret arrangement. Stepan, a childhood friend of Alexander's mother, became a donor and promised never to interfere in the family's life. But fate had other plans. A year after Alexander's birth, his mother died in a car accident, bound by his promise. Stepan could only watch from afar, never close enough to reveal the secret. The last entry was dated 2 months ago. The doctors say I have only a few weeks left. Tomorrow, I will meet with the notary. Time to pass the baton at last. All these years, I believe the greatest sacrifice was watching your child grow from afar. Now I understand the true sacrifice is turning his world upside down after my death. But he has the right to know. Everyone has the right to know their roots. Alexander, forgive me this last selfish act. I want you to know I was always near, even when invisible. At every important moment of your life, in the shadows, among the crowd, I was there. I hope one day you will understand and maybe forgive. When Alexander finished the last line, it was deep night outside. In one room, he found an old graduation photo, himself in the center, smiling, and in the background among other parents, a faint figure of a man in a dark coat. Alexander opened the window, and the cold night air rushed in, drying the tears he hadn't even noticed on his cheeks. Somewhere deep in the garden, autumn leaves rustled, whispering stories of the past. The life that had seemed such a predictable book suddenly revealed a new side, unopened pages whose existence he had never suspected. On the table next to the diaries lay another object, an old chess king carved from dark wood. Alexander took it in his hands and remembered how the father he had known all his life taught him to play chess. The king always remains king, even if he stands in the shadows, he used to say. Now, those words took on a deeper meaning. 2 fathers, one who raised him, and another who silently watched from the shadows. 2 different stories of love woven into one, his own. The sun rose above the horizon, flooding the room with golden light as Alexander finally fell asleep in the old armchair, holding the chess piece and the photograph of the man who had watched him from afar all his life, remaining an unknown shadow to keep his world whole. The strangers didn't just turn his reality upside down. It gave him a new understanding of love, which it manifests in the most unexpected forms, even in absence.